Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
Good. Thanks for joining us. And thanks for those who are watching. My name is Jeremy Heinen. I'm Director of Stewardship and Development at Holy Trinity. And this is another episode of Courage Under Quarantine, where we've been talking to some counselors, some therapists, some psychologists, and talking about some of the healthy ways that we can adjust and grow and thrive under these stay-at-home quarantine conditions. And tonight we have some very special guests. Jaime Duke here is with us, and Tom Hornbeck, and they are therapists, counselors that have private practices. And I'm just gonna give each of you just a little time to introduce yourselves and tell us a little about you. So Jaime, why don't you go first?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Jaime Duke, and I have a private practice in Overland Park. I also work for Holy Trinity, so it's really nice. And I see mostly individuals, couples, families, and my focus is like trauma, PTSD, and anxiety, but also just any family relationship issues or just self-esteem or life transitions or grief or things like that.
Great, thanks.
Hey, yep. My name is Tom Hornbeck, and I'm also in private practice in Overland Park. I also see students at Benedictine College, doing that 1 day a week with everything going on now, doing that online now and seeing students there. I support people in a variety of ways through a lot of work around anxiety and some depression, some on addictions, and moving through different ways of growth through those areas.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys. And both familiar Holy Trinity faces. Jaime, as she said, works at Holy Trinity as coordinator of our outreach and volunteers, and a part-time role because she's also a counselor, a therapist. And then Tom, of course, was around for a little while in his seminary days, and now has a career in counseling. So
Right.
thank you so much for being with us, guys.
Good to be here.
Great. So I wanted to start, I think, with a question about relationships, and I'll start with Jaime. It's really hard when you're trying to think of ways to nurture your relationship. Loretta and I haven't been on a date in a while, and it's just hard to think about, like, well, you're not going to go out to eat, and who's going to come over and watch the kids because it's stay at home, era. And so we're just struggling with just finding ways to continue to nurture our relationship and even maybe relationships with the kids. So I was wondering if you could speak into that and maybe share some about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think it is so hard because, there's that quote, you are only as holy as you are in your own home. And right now we're all in our own homes a lot. So it can feel like we're on top of one another and our schedules are changed and nothing seems regular. And I think that's really hard on relationships and kids and just relationships in general, not just marriage. And so even work relationships or different things like that. So I was just trying to think of some practical ways. One way, and this is coming from John Gottman, is studies couples, and this is his book, 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And one way they talk about is called building love maps. And so just getting to know your partner, maybe asking questions or like kind of almost rediscovering them or just like figuring out new things you didn't know and being curious is something that you can do. So just like you might say, if you could do any job in the world, what would it be? Or just ask open-ended questions and be curious and just something, make it fun. You can even do that with the kids. Like, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? Or different things like that. I think it's just like a small practical thing you can do since you can't really get out or get a babysitter or, it's just like a small little, I think he talks about small things often in relationships. And so just something small and practical you can do that doesn't require money or going out or a babysitter.
That's great. Cool. Yeah, it requires creativity, definitely, because you can't go to your standards, like I said, go out to eat or go see a movie or go walk on the plaza, or, you know, all these things have been taken away. So it's like, got to work a little harder at that. So it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, Tom, did you have anything to speak into that?
I really like the idea of curiosity and like re-engaging with that. I find that that's helpful for a lot of things during this time. That curiosity about ourselves and our emotions and our thoughts, and not being even so immersed in them or judgmental of our thoughts or feelings, but then applying that to others as well. And this attitude of curiosity about, oh, we're at home now, we're seeing each other a lot more. I didn't know you did that. Maybe that's annoying, but instead having an idea of curiosity about that, like that sense of wonder about the person, and re-engaging that of who that person is, and really encountering them again as a person, and tapping into that sense of curiosity of even imagining that you don't know them that well. This is the first time meeting them in some sense, and using that to spur the deeper engagement of seeing them as a person, not as a barrier or an obstacle to living the life I want to live right now, but a way of really kind of fostering a deeper connection with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like you're dating again, like just, you know, when you were first dating and you're like curious and like, oh, I didn't know that was your favorite sports team, or different things like that. I saw one lady, she was like, I never knew my husband on meetings was let's circle back to that guy. She was like, but I just thought that was so funny because it's like, yeah, I probably would never have known that, like, you know, work habits or different things about your partner that you don't see during the day. So yeah, I love that, just being curious about it and like finding it, you know, fun and fascinating rather than annoying.
Yeah. And life is kind of slowed down now, and you can like stop and notice those things now a little bit. You know, when our former life was kind of busy, and you know, you might both be working, or you have kids practices and games, and you know, it's just you're on kind of constant go. And now we're kind of forced to stop, and you might take note of some of those things just naturally.
Mhm.
So yeah, great. um I'm gonna kind of turn the channel on this, and just with this pandemic and the longer it's been going on, you know, I just heard this morning that the jobless rates are at an all-time high. um, and even, you know, some of us or friends of ours may know someone who is um, that they've lost a loved one through this pandemic. So um, uh, just wondering, Tom, could you share like some ways that maybe some of us could work through that grief or that loss of either a job or a loved one, or just um, financial loss, or whatever it may be.
Right. So we all are experiencing losses to some degree or another, it seems like, in this time. And those more significant ones or smaller ones, I think first thing I try to encourage people is to not to compare your losses to other people. And that can either magnify or minimize what you might be going through. Let your loss be your loss and not compare emotions or pain. Just with that, I'm entering into acknowledging like what it is you're feeling, and not have any presupposed idea of what you should be feeling, what I should be feeling during this time, whether it's a loss through a death of somebody or a job or something that we might consider smaller. That what you're feeling is what you're feeling, and just allow yourself to slow down and to be present to that, and even to name it. Say, oh, this is again, back to that curiosity around the emotion of, oh, this is sadness, or this is grief, or this is anger. Being present to that, and even being present to that emotion, like physically in the body, like where am I feeling that? Am I feeling it in my chest, in my stomach? Even like what shape it has, what temperature, things you wouldn't think to ask about a feeling. Allow you to
Mm-hmm.
feel that and experience it and be present to it, as opposed to like pushing it away, because that takes a lot of emotional and mental energy to try to push emotions away that are unpleasant. But that's our go-to habit, is just push them away because they're not pleasant. Allow ourselves to feel that, to move through that. And the same with thoughts too. You might have thoughts that this isn't fair, this is too hard, this like all these different thoughts. And sometimes we can get judging thoughts, whether they're healthy or not, and just accepting, like, right now I'm having this thought. Maybe I don't like this thought. Maybe it's not pleasant, but I'm having this thought, and it's okay to have that thought, just to acknowledge that, and that helps actually to move on from the thought. Is to acknowledge I'm having the thought, this is too hard. Even just saying that out loud. I'm having the thought that I can't handle this. I'm having the thought that this isn't fair. Just to acknowledge that it's a thought. And thoughts come and go, and sometimes they're
Yeah.
or sometimes they're not.
To not label it good or bad, or to not judge
Right.
it, or just
Right.
let it be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that sense of, once you've acknowledged the thought or feeling, some kind of different grounding exercises are powerful in this time. So pushing your feet into the floor, pushing your fingertips together, or just straighten your back. Allow yourself to come into your body physically, instead of just kind of get out of your head, and to feel physically what's going on. And then from that, like, enter into the external world by engaging your five senses. Like, you're just looking around, like, what are 5 things I can see, and naming those things, or what can I hear, what can I smell? Entering in, not as a distraction, not to run away from those thoughts or feelings, but to be present to the fullness of reality. Because our thoughts are important; they're part of us, but they're not all of us. That's one approach to grief. There's other approaches too that we can continue to talk about and share about. That's kind of one approach I find useful for anxiety and grief and sadness.
Yeah.
In it, come into your body, and then ground around that.
That's great. Yeah, it makes sense, because I think when loss happens, or grief happens, it's you like, internally you separate from reality, because you're processing. You're in your head a lot, you're in your feelings a lot, and so some of those exercises of reminding yourself that you're not alone, that, like you said, the 5 senses, like, what do you hear, what do you see, what do you who's around you, what voices do you hear, you're still a part of the world, placing your feet on the earth. I mean, those kind of make sense, to draw you out of, not that you're trying to run away from it, but to remind yourself where you are. So Jaime, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that all is very spot on. I think maybe just when I think about it too, sometimes I worry about, how am I going to communicate with someone if they're grieving? Is it going to be awkward, or am I going to say the right thing or say the wrong thing? And so I think something I've just been encouraging clients is to show empathy in the fact that you're not trying to fix them or fix the problem. You're not trying to give unsolicited advice. Like, a lot of times people might just need a listening ear, especially right now. And if you can just kind of sit with them and listen and say, what do you need? And I can give you what you need, like, ask them. And then make sure you're, just being, again, like, empathetic and saying, I could see why you'd be so upset. And, like, I could, I'd be upset too, and kind of validating their emotions and their feelings, and holding that for them. I think that's something that's really hard. And I think we feel like, oh, don't want to say the right thing or the wrong thing, or make them more upset. But I think just the fact that we, again, acknowledging it and being present is so important, and just being empathetic.
Yeah. I mean, and like I do, Jaime, like, working for a church, we see this a lot, like, we're around people at these life-changing moments in their lives, like a funeral or a loss. And I have been, as many people do, you do ask yourself, like, what do I do? I don't know what to say. What if I say the wrong thing? If you're with someone. And I've always tried to remind myself to just think like he's a person who has just lost someone. She is a person who just, like, to remind myself, like, they're a person, and they, not to, like, escape that they aren't what has happened to them. Basically, they're still a person, and they have experienced something terrible. But it kind of helps, at least me, remind myself, like, just talk to them, like, they're still a person, sure. And so yeah. And so one other thing too, and I don't know if someone told me this, or I'm sure it came up in a conversation at some point, was to just be with them. Like, it's not even what you say, and it's not even sometimes you don't even have to say anything, but to just be with a person, when they're grieving or when they've lost someone, just a hand on their shoulder or on their back, or just holding their hand through the process, that helps too.
Yeah, I saw a thing for kids just about how, sometimes we feel like we want to fix things for them too. And I think it's the same thing with grief or any relationship. And the dad said, I just asked him, do you want a hug, a listening ear, or advice? And he said 9 times out of 10, they just want a hug. Like they just want that comfort. And so I think that's, like you said, just being there sometimes, and just your presence is so important. And I think we overcomplicate it. And again, we get in our head instead of our heart and our body. And we try to be like, oh, I have to have the exact right words to say. And really it's just like feeling that and just being present is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And the processing of feelings too is like what you were saying, Tom, with, kind of naming your feeling. What's it look like? Where is it at in your body? What shape is it? Jaime and I have read this book called The Body Keeps the Score. Is that the name of the title? The Body Keeps the Score? Yeah. Have you read that, Tom?
I want to. It's on my list. It sounds great.
Oh, man. It was a great book. And it really just talks about, people that go through trauma and the brain's effect from that, and the body's effect from that, and how these two things they coexist. It's not, a feeling isn't separate from the body, and that's even Catholic theology, theology of the body, that we're not just a soul and we're not just a body. It's like we are a body and a soul and our emotions and our thoughts, like it's all one thing. And so that's all just in line with that. So that's great. Makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I love about the Catholic Church is that in Mass, we're engaging our body the whole time. And then also just the Eucharist, we're taking a part of his body and making it, part of ours. I think that's just so neat.
Yeah, the sacraments and the physicality. I was talking to my doctor the other day about that, who's not Catholic, but he went to Rockhurst College, and so he's kind of has a curiosity about Catholicism, and he's reading like some of the lives of the saints, like Saint Teresa of Avila and John of the Cross, some of the mystics, and he's very intrigued about the physicality of Catholicism with our sacramentals and our sacraments, and just the the body and the blood of Christ, and just all of these real real things, real earthly physical things that we have. So great stuff. So I want to kind of end with talking about in general anxiety. And a lot of people are, and even in our house, our home, are just uncertainty about the future. What's going to happen? When are we going to be done with the stay-at-home order? What's going to happen over the summer? Is it going to come back in the fall? Worse, with all the headlines and everything you read on the news. Maybe people are going through feelings of uncertainty about jobs or finances. And that leads to a lot of anxiety that people may be going through. Tom, what are some ways that we can adjust and deal with this in a healthy way?
So a lot of that you're describing there is kind of like a lack of control and a lack of knowledge about what the future is going to be like. Again, acknowledging that lack of control and being honest and upfront about that to ourselves, just saying like, I don't have control over this, and this is hard. It's hard not to have control. Be real with that, and to look for things of what we can control in our day-to-day lives. We can control like when we get out of bed, what we do first thing in the morning. Just that's a morning offering or being present to God, being present to our families, and having that intentionality of I can still live and care for others. I can still kind of live out my values, like being able to identify like what kind of person I want to be, whether that's one who's honest or caring, hardworking, reliable, whatever your individual values are. We find fulfillment when we live those values. We can still live our values even with this uncertainty. It certainly can be harder and scarier and more anxiety provoking. We can still be in touch with those values, which leads to fulfillment and peace as we live out those values. And I guess to encourage people, as I was saying earlier, with when those thoughts bombard us, of having the thought that I'm going to be in this house forever. I'm having the thought that I don't know if we're going to be able to eat next week. I'm having the thought that I might not be able to go exercise. I'm having the thought that no, I can't see my best friend. Just acknowledge those as simply as thoughts, not as necessarily good or bad or true or false. Simply say I'm having the thought that, and to notice that, and just that sense of curiosity, even about thoughts, even anxiety-provoking thoughts, instead of trying to push them away or run away from anxiety-provoking thoughts. Have that curiosity about that. Doesn't make it go away. It's not a fatalism either of just saying I can't do anything about this. But it's also not that pushing away that can be more anxiety-provoking.
That's great. That's great. Jaime, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, all that I think is perfect. And yeah, like I'll do the same thing with clients. I have them draw a circle and write in there what I can control, and then draw a circle outside of that what I can't control. Because it's so often hard, we kind of start absorbing the whole world's problems, and that's not, that causes anxiety. And again, you can't predict things. I think that's what's so scary, is no one knows what's going to happen. If we just had a crystal ball, that would be wonderful, and then we would all feel so much better, but that's not reality. So also, I think values are really important too. I think just knowing, like, okay, these are my things that are really important to me and what's going to ground me during this time. And in times of chaos, it helps to have things that are reliable and consistent. That's why schedules are important and things like that. But then also giving yourself grace if you don't follow the schedule too, just being like, no matter what happens, I have to be, understanding and give myself grace during this time. And I think that's also why a lot of prayers are really helpful, like the Our Father and things like that, because we might know them by heart. And so it's something that a resource you can pull in, that like, I know this by heart and I know exactly what I'm going to say next, and it's reliable, and it's not something that you have to think about really. I guess it's kind of just one of those things that's soothing and helpful when you're feeling scared or overwhelmed.
Yeah, mindfulness, that's really big. And again, calling back to some of those practices, if you feel yourself going or sense yourself going down this anxiety road of thoughts, to maybe the five senses, like come back to those, or the grounding, and help you get out of that sort of rumination of worry, and wake you up to the present moment, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah. Just reminded me, a lot of the times anxiety, I think, can be self-focused. Right now we're talking about so much what's going on in the world, like we don't know the future. But I also think it's important to recognize and to be there for people who might be having anxiety about like who they are. Like, I'm not good enough to handle this, or I don't have the capacities to live this out. I'm not a good father. I'm not a good mother right now. The same idea of being aware and just naming those thoughts and having the thought, I'm not a good father right now. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. That thought probably isn't helpful. Like, acknowledge it and let go of those thoughts. Not just thoughts about the external world, but thoughts about ourselves can really be intensified at this time. Negative self-talk.
Yeah, sometimes, the same thing I'll recommend to clients, like picture your thoughts are inside these little bubbles going past, and you just toss them, like some kind of tool to help them just, that's a thought, and is it serving me right now? No, it's not helping, so I'm going to pop it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, great. I think that kind of wraps up our night. Do you guys have any other thoughts or feelings or that you want to share towards people that are just in this COVID-19 pandemic, that we're all just trying to do the best with that, staying at home?
Yeah, there's so much. I think, yeah, just again, not putting so much pressure on yourself or your partner or your kids, or I think it, because it's hard not to. I think sometimes too, right now, you see posts on social media like, I'm going to use all this time to write a book, or, learn a new language. And it's like, that's great. And I think that's wonderful. But at the same time, if you don't do those things, that's okay. Like, we're all actively going through this traumatic grief experience, and there's no right or wrong. Everyone grieves differently, and so just to not to put so much pressure on that, and just let yourself grieve if that's what you need.
Yeah, that's great. And even just with our social media world, and like someone may post like, I cleaned out my whole garage and I've baked 3 pies, and all my kids know Chinese now, and it's like, and then you're feeling like, I haven't done anything this whole time, like. And yeah, you're right. Just let it go, and don't. It's okay to have goals, but be okay if things don't go according to plan. So, yeah, that's good. Tom?
Right. Yeah, to have that gentleness with yourself, that realization that some people are taking this time to do those projects and things, but some people need time to grieve or just to be simple and be with their family, and not see it, not like feed into that productivity mode that we so often fall into, that this is just more time to be productive and to do this different way. Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder, Jamie, from that of not that comparison, not that feeding into that mentality of I have to do more, or I have to utilize this time. I'm not living this time well. Like, just be present.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our Western culture is so go, go, go all the time, and we're finally slowed down, and we're like, well, we have to fill this. Let's keep going while we're slowed down. And it's like, well, let's just honor this, and like, let's be slow, and let's see what this is like, and pay attention to our body, and
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, guys, I could talk with you all night. I'm sure you're amazing therapists. I've just become better listening to you. You've had great advice, and so thank you for your time. I really appreciate it, and good luck with all your work with helping people. I mean, you're on the front lines of this, helping people with their mental health, and taking care of their mental health care through this, because I'm sure things are, if they haven't ramped up yet, I'm sure they will, with people going through this and needing your help. So thank you. God bless you and your families, and we'll see you around Holy Trinity.
Thank you.
That's good. Thanks, Jeremy.
All right. Thanks so much. God bless.
Yes.